This mansion is a monument to a son's love. Nestled on a private hill, it is the gift that millionaire Ethan gave his mother, Eleanor, a paradise for her golden years. But to her, it is a gilded prison. Here, the jailer isn't iron bars, but the sweet smile of her future daughter-in-law. Here, torture isn't the lash of a whip, but words poisoned with the pretense of care. This is the story of a cold war waged daily in silence, a battle not just for a fortune, but for the very soul and affection of the man who stands between them. Because in this house, the truth is the most dangerous thing, and a mother's love could become her own death sentence. If you are listening from anywhere in the world, leave a comment and subscribe, because some truths need to be spread, even if they might shake your beliefs. Some stories, no matter how painful, must be told. Eleanor looked at herself in the enormous, ornate mirror of her new room, a space so vast and cold it felt less like a bedroom and more like a luxury mausoleum. The burgundy dress that Ethan had insisted on buying for her felt like someone else's armor. The expensive fabric was an insult to her hands, which were worn from a lifetime of roughness of scrubbing floors to pay for Ethan's first books, of kneading dough for bake sales to afford his school trips. This dress wasn't armor. It was a costume, and she was an unwilling actress in a play she didn't understand. It had been 3 weeks since she'd moved into the mansion. 3 weeks that felt like 3 years. Each day was a quiet battle of wills, a tightrope walk over a chasm of unspoken hostility. The only person who offered even a glimmer of warmth was Gloria, the maid who had been with the family long enough to remember Ethan as a boy with scraped knees. Gloria never said much, but her eyes, always observant, often held a silent sympathy that Eleanor clung to like a life raft. She had been sitting on the edge of the bed for an hour, unable to decide if going down to dinner was an act of courage or the greatest cowardice. The sound of the door opening without warning made her jump. It was Scarlett, who entered without knocking, a habit Eleanor was beginning to notice and detest. Her son's fiancé was already dressed for dinner, in a tight, white dress that made her look like a marble statue. Her eyes, however, lacked the warmth of a future daughter-in-law, possessing instead the analytical coldness of an inspector. "Not ready yet, mother-in-law?" Scarlett asked, her voice a syrup that failed to hide the poison. Her gaze swept over Eleanor's simple clothes, clean and dignified, but ones that screamed humility in this environment of opulence. "Ethan is about to come down," Scarlett continued, her voice dripping with false concern. "You don't want him to see you looking like that. He might get embarrassed." Eleanor felt the blood rush to her face. "Embarrassed? These are clean clothes, Scarlett, and they're mine." Of course. I didn't mean to offend," Scarlett said, walking over to the closet and throwing it open, revealing the burgundy dress. "It's just that Ethan went to so much trouble to buy this for you. He wants you to shine, to look like the mother of a millionaire, not like, well, you know. Put it on. Come on. It'll be our little conspiracy to make him happy." The phrase was a perfect trap. To refuse would be a direct slight to her son's generosity. Eleanor nodded in silence, feeling cornered. While she changed, Scarlett remained in the room, watching her, judging her. When Eleanor finally put on the dress, Scarlett circled her like a shark. "Much better. Now you look the part. Come on, let's go down. Lean on me. We wouldn't want you to fall. It would be a shame to stain such an expensive dress before everyone has a chance to see it." Scarlett's grip on her arm was like a vice, a painful reminder of who was in control. At the foot of the stairs, Ethan waited for them with a smile that could have lit up the entire city. "Well, look at my 2 queens. Mom, you look spectacular. Doesn't she, my love? Like a movie star. A star, my darling. I told you. She just needed a little push," Scarlett replied, giving Eleanor a meaningful look before leading her to the dining room. The dining room was a display of opulence that turned Eleanor's stomach. They sat down, and Gloria, the maid who had worked in the house for years and had watched Ethan grow up, began to serve the wine. She was a discreet woman with an observant gaze, and the only person in that place who seemed real. "Gloria," Scarlett intervened suddenly, just as the maid was about to pour Eleanor wine from an elegant bottle. "Please serve the lady the house wine, the one we drink during the week. I doubt she'll notice the difference, and there's no need to waste the reserve. Her palate is more traditional." Ethan, distracted by a message on his phone, paid no attention. But Gloria and Eleanor exchanged a brief, understanding glance. The insult, a sharp jab of classism disguised as domestic efficiency, hung in the air between them. Gloria, with an almost imperceptible tension in her jaw, nodded and went to get the other bottle. Eleanor felt her cheeks burn, but she kept her eyes fixed on her empty plate. "Well, family, we need to talk about the wedding," Ethan said, putting his phone away. "I was looking at flower catalogs." "What do you think, Mom? Did you like any flowers?" Eleanor saw a small opportunity to participate, to be herself. "Well, son, I've always liked daisies. They're simple flowers, but very cheerful. In the yard of our little house, I had a garden full of them." Scarlett let out a crystalline, condescending laugh. "Oh, how sweet, mother-in-law. Daisies. What a quaint memory, right, my love? For our wedding, we're thinking of something more sophisticated. Orchids flown in from Hawaii, maybe some black tulips from the Netherlands, something that shows our status. You understand? Daisies are nice, but for a small-town christening." Ethan, wanting to mediate, tried again. "Well, tell Scarlett a story from when I was a boy, Mom, so she can get to know you better. Tell her about the time I fell from the peach tree." Eleanor smiled, a genuine memory at last. "Oh, that time. You were about 8 years old, and you climbed to the highest branch." "You had a peach tree at your house?" Scarlett interrupted, with a curiosity that sounded more like an interrogation. "Yes, a very large one in the backyard." "Ah, so you had a yard. I thought your house was smaller. Was the roof tin or shingle? I heard that in those neighborhoods, the sun really heats up the tin." Each question was an excavation into her humble past, designed to expose it, to highlight it with a fluorescent marker of poverty in front of her son. "It was shingle," Eleanor replied curtly. In that moment, something shifted inside Eleanor. Scarlett thought she was digging up shame, but what she was actually unearthing was pride. Pride in the shingle roof that Eleanor and her late husband had repaired with their own hands. Pride in the small yard that had produced the sweetest peaches and the brightest daisies. Scarlett saw poverty. Eleanor remembered a kingdom built on love and hard work. She remained silent, not out of weakness, but because she knew some treasures are invisible to eyes blinded by greed. The dinner continued in that tone. Every attempt by Ethan to include his mother was sabotaged by Scarlett with an innocent question or a sophisticated comment that left Eleanor feeling out of place. The tension was so thick you could have cut it with the silver knives. Then the main course arrived, blackened redfish with a spicy Creole sauce. "This is my favorite dish," exclaimed Ethan. "Mom, you have to try it, but be careful. It's devilishly spicy." "Your mom doesn't mind, right, mother-in-law?" "You're one of the brave ones," Scarlett said, serving Eleanor a generous portion and making sure it had an exaggerated amount of sauce. Eleanor, not wanting to be rude, took a bite. The spiciness was an explosion of liquid fire in her mouth. She felt herself choking, that air couldn't reach her lungs. Her eyes filled with tears, and she blindly reached for the glass of water. It was at that precise moment that Scarlett, under the guise of laughing at something Ethan said, stretched out her arm. It was not a random gesture. With the calculated precision of a predator, she slid Eleanor's glass just a few inches away, a small, deliberate movement, enough so that her desperate fingers found only empty air. The gesture was so subtle that Ethan noticed absolutely nothing. But Gloria, who was serving more bread, saw it. She saw the intention, the calculated malice. Her face hardened like a stone. It's in these silent, almost invisible moments that the deepest wounds are inflicted. How do you fight an enemy who attacks without ever throwing a punch? The battle had just begun, and the rules of engagement were terrifyingly clear. Eleanor gasped, her hand fumbling clumsily on the tablecloth. Panic began to take hold of her. "Gloria, water for the lady." "Quickly," Scarlett ordered, feigning sudden alarm. "Oh, mother-in-law, for God's sake, you're so sensitive." "I told Ethan this was very spicy." Gloria hurried to fill the glass and put it in her hands. Eleanor drank desperately. The cool water was a heavenly relief for her burning throat. When she could catch her breath, she looked up and saw Scarlett watching her. In her eyes, there was no concern, but a spark of victory. The pure pleasure of having tortured and humiliated her in front of everyone and getting away with it. Later, when Ethan got up to take a business call in his office, Eleanor was left alone with Scarlett in the immense living room. The silence was heavy, charged with the undeclared battle that had just been fought. "You see how easy everything is when you cooperate, mother-in-law," Scarlett said, filing a nail with indifference. "You smile, you nod, you eat what you're served, and you keep quiet. That way, we're all happy, and nobody gets hurt. Your role is very simple. I suggest you learn it well, and get used to your new place in this family. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm going to see what my fiancé needs." Scarlett stood up and left, leaving Eleanor alone on the brocade sofa, with the taste of spice and humiliation in her mouth, and with an icy certainty in her heart. This wasn't a dinner. It had been the first of many battles, and she was losing them all. The next morning, sunlight filtered through the mansion's large windows, painting golden squares on the Persian rugs. It was a scene of peace and wealth that contrasted violently with the storm brewing inside Eleanor. Breakfast was a meticulously rehearsed play. Ethan, brimming with energy, talked about his day's schedule while Scarlett served him coffee and spread jam on his toast, playing the part of the perfect future wife. She gave Eleanor sweet smiles and asked if she had slept well, questions whose answers she couldn't care less about. "Well, my loves, I have to go. I have a meeting with some Japanese investors that could change the future of the company," Ethan said, standing up and adjusting his tie. He went to Scarlett and gave her a long, deep kiss. Then he took out his wallet. "Here, my queen," he said, handing her a platinum credit card. "Go shopping with your friends and start looking at things for the house decor. Buy whatever you want. There's no limit. You deserve it for making me so happy." Scarlett's eyes glittered with a greed she skillfully disguised as gratitude. "Oh, my love, you shouldn't have, but thank you. I'll use it wisely." Then Ethan went to his mother and gave her a strong, genuine hug. "Be good, Mom. Rest, read a book, walk in the garden. This is your home too. I want you to enjoy it. I love you very much, and you, my son. I hope it goes well for you," Eleanor replied, clinging to that hug like a castaway to a plank. Ethan left. The sound of the main door closing echoed in the silence, and with that sound, the spell was broken. Scarlett stood in the middle of the dining room with the credit card in her hand. The smile vanished from her face, as if it had never existed. Eleanor, who was picking up her plate to take it to the kitchen, felt a shiver run down her spine. She knew what was coming. Scarlett didn't follow her immediately. Instead, she took out her cell phone and dialed a number, speaking loud enough for Eleanor to hear perfectly from the kitchen doorway. "Chloe, friend, you won't believe it. Ethan just left me a card with no limit. Yes, no limit. No, of course not. I need it to buy a few things for the house and maybe a new handbag, the one we saw at the boutique. Hey, want to meet for lunch? I need a break from this house. Yes, it's just such a pain to have to entertain the old mummy all day." Yes, his mom. Oh, she's a lost cause, friend. But well, anything to secure the future, right? See you at 1. Kisses. Every word was a poisoned dart. Mummy. Secure the future. Eleanor entered the kitchen with her heart pounding in her chest. She went straight to her little corner, her sanctuary, seeking the normalcy of her instant coffee and her cookies. She needed that little ritual to ground herself, to remember who she was. Scarlett entered the kitchen seconds later, moving with a predatory arrogance. She leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. "You know, Eleanor," she said. Her voice was now a whip. "I've decided I'm not even going to call you mother-in-law anymore. It's a title of respect and affection, and you and I have neither. You haven't earned that right. To you, I am the lady of the house, and you are the permanent guest." She approached the counter where Eleanor was preparing her coffee. She looked at the chipped mug, the cheap glass jar. "I really don't understand how Ethan could have come from such misery." "This is what you drink? This trash?" she asked, pointing at the coffee. Before Eleanor could react, Scarlett took the coffee jar, opened it, and with an expression of profound disgust, emptied the entire contents onto the freshly polished white marble floor. The dark granules scattered like dirt. "This smells of poverty, of complacency," she said as she walked to the trash can and dropped the empty glass jar, which made a hollow, sad sound. "I hate complacency, and I hate filth." Eleanor looked at her, horrified. "But why did you do that? That was my coffee. It was trash," Scarlett yelled, her face contorted with rage. "And I don't want trash in my house. I don't want it on my countertops, I don't want it in my pantries, and if I could, I wouldn't want it breathing my air." Gloria, drawn by the shout, appeared at the kitchen door, her face pale. Scarlett saw her. "You," she snapped. "Clean up this mess, and then you'll have to disinfect the entire kitchen. Who knows what kind of bacteria this lady brings from her neighborhood?" Then she turned to Eleanor, her voice dropping to a dangerous hiss. "I'm going to give you a new list of rules, since it seems you didn't understand last night's. Rule number 1, you are forbidden to sit on the sofas in the main living room. They are Italian silk, and I don't want you to stink them up. Rule number 2, you are forbidden to speak to my friends if they visit. You will lock yourself in your room and not come out until I tell you to. Rule number 3, the pool is for me and my guests, not for you. Rule number 4, and the most important, you are forbidden to speak to me unless I speak to you first. Your opinion, your memories, and your stories interest no one. Was I clear enough? Or do you need me to draw it for you with crayons?" Eleanor, humiliated in front of Gloria, could only nod, tears of rage and helplessness burning her eyes. Scarlett smiled with satisfaction. "Perfect. I'm going shopping. Gloria, make sure the guest eats in the staff room. Today there's lentil soup for the staff. Enjoy." Scarlett left, leaving behind a dense silence and a mess on the floor. Gloria looked at Eleanor, then at the spilled coffee. Without a word, she got a broom and a dustpan and began to clean. Her movements were mechanical, but her eyes were filled with a contained fury. When she finished, she approached the luxurious espresso machine, the one Scarlett had forbidden Eleanor to touch. She prepared a coffee, the strong, delicious aroma filling the air. She served it to Eleanor in a fine porcelain cup and handed it to her. "Here, ma'am," she whispered. Sometimes a good coffee helps to endure the poison. It was a small act of rebellion, a gesture that told Eleanor that even though she was in a golden cage, she was not completely alone. In a world of overwhelming cruelty, a single act of kindness can feel like a revolution. Gloria's small rebellion was a flicker of light in the darkness. But would it be enough to arm Eleanor for the war ahead? Stay with us as the psychological manipulation escalates to a terrifying new level. Eleanor climbed the stairs, clinging to the polished wooden handrail as if it were the last life raft in a raging ocean. Her legs felt weak, like jelly, and each step was a monumental effort. The assault in the kitchen had drained her of all strength. Upon reaching her room, she turned the lock and leaned against the door, breathing heavily. She felt like a fugitive in her own life, a prisoner in a luxury jail. She walked to the large window overlooking the garden, seeking some air. But when she tried to open it, she found the handle was stuck or locked, an insignificant detail that, at that moment, felt like a perfect metaphor for her situation. Trapped, with no escape, the feeling of claustrophobia was suffocating. She needed to connect with something real, something to remind her that her life hadn't always been this hell of silk and cruelty. She knelt beside her old cardboard suitcase and took out her box of treasures. She sat on the floor, ignoring the softness of the carpet, and opened it on her lap. The smell of old wood and stored paper transported her to another time. First, she took out the little blue knitted bootie she had made for Ethan when he was a baby. It was so small it fit in the palm of her hand. She remembered her clumsy fingers struggling with the needles, the excitement of feeling his little kicks in her belly. Beside it, she placed her husband's old wristwatch. It hadn't worked for decades, but she could still feel the warmth of his skin on the worn metal. She remembered his strong hands, his gruff laugh, and the immense void he left when he was gone. Ethan was all she had left of him, the continuation of their love. Then came the photo from his elementary school graduation, with her gap-toothed, proud little boy, and the drawing of the smiling Sunday. Each object was an anchor, a reminder of a life of sacrifices and a love so vast it knew no bounds. It was that love that filled her with a sudden, burning wave of fury. How dare that woman trample on everything she represented? How dare she threaten the only light in her life? The impulse was stronger than reason. She picked up her cell phone. She couldn't go on like this. Ethan had to know the truth. He had to open his eyes. Her thumb trembled as she searched for his contact. She paused over the call button, her heart beating wildly. "You have to do it, Eleanor," she whispered to herself. "For your son. He has to know what kind of viper he's going to marry." But a colder, more fearful voice answered in her head. "And what if he doesn't believe you? What if Scarlett, with her crocodile tears and well-rehearsed lies, convinces him you're crazy, that it's the jealousy of an old woman who doesn't want to let go of her son? You'll lose him. He'll throw you out of his house and his life. You'll be left with nothing, completely alone, and he'll be with her, trapped forever." The dilemma was tearing her apart. She was about to press the button, to risk it all in a desperate act, when the phone screen lit up with a notification. It was a message from Ethan. She opened it. It was a photograph. Ethan and Scarlett were in a jewelry store, smiling for the camera as they looked at a velvet tray of wedding bands. Scarlett was pointing to an elegant, diamond-encrusted band that matched her engagement ring perfectly. Below the photo, a text. "Hi, Mom. Scarlett and I decided to go ahead and choose the wedding bands. Aren't they beautiful? We're choosing the symbol of our eternal happiness. Thank you for always supporting us and for loving Scarlett so much. We love you." The message was a sledgehammer blow straight to the heart. Every happy word, every show of love for Scarlett, was a shovelful of dirt on her hopes. She saw the photo, the radiant and undeniable happiness on her son's face. She saw how he looked at Scarlett. She saw the future he had chosen, a future in which she, Eleanor, was just a spectator. Telling him the truth now wouldn't be an act of salvation, it would be an act of destruction. It would be like dropping a bomb in the middle of his paradise. With a sob that broke in her throat, she dropped the phone onto the carpet, hugged her knees, and let herself be overcome by pain. There was no choice. Her silence was the price of her son's happiness, and as she had always done, she was willing to pay it without a fuss. She would stay, she would endure, and she would become the best actress the world had ever known. Later, Soft knocks on the door roused her from her stupor. It was Gloria, with a small tray in her hands. "Ma'am, I brought you some chamomile tea and some of the cookies you like. I bought them this morning at the corner store." Eleanor looked at her with eyes swollen from crying. On the tray, next to the tea, was a small packet of animal crackers. Gloria placed the tray on the nightstand. Her voice was a conspiratorial whisper. "Sometimes in this house, the walls hear and see many things, ma'am, but there are also loyal hearts. If you need anything, whatever it is to vent, a glass of water, someone to believe, you don't hesitate to find me. You are not as alone as they want to make you feel." Gloria gave a small, respectful bow and left, closing the door carefully. Eleanor looked at the cookies, a small beacon of kindness in the midst of overwhelming darkness, and for the first time in many hours, she felt that maybe, just maybe, there would be a way to survive. The afternoon became a silent battlefield. Eleanor, following Gloria's non-verbal advice, decided to go down to the living room. She was not going to be intimidated or remain locked up like a prisoner. She sat in one of the armchairs, a little away from the main sofa, with a book in her lap that she couldn't read. Her mere presence was an act of defiance. Scarlett, who was planning her shopping afternoon on the phone, noticed her, and her tone of voice became sharper. She hung up and addressed Eleanor. "Well, well, I see you finally came out of your cave," she said, examining her from head to toe. "Is your morning tantrum over? Or do we need to throw another one of your treasures in the trash for you to understand the rules?" Eleanor looked up from the book, her gaze firm. "This is also my son's house, Scarlett. I have a right to be here." Eleanor's calmness infuriated Scarlett more than any shouting would have. "You have the right to what I allow you to have. Don't forget it. Now, if you would do me the favor of not stinking up the atmosphere with your martyr act, I would appreciate it. I'm trying to have a pleasant afternoon." Just then, Ethan's car was heard. Scarlett's transformation was instantaneous and astonishing. Her face softened, her posture relaxed, and an expression of sweet melancholy appeared on her features. By the time Ethan walked through the door, Scarlett looked like a suffering saint. "My love, you're here," she said, running into his arms. But instead of kissing him, she rested her head on his chest and sighed dramatically. Ethan, concerned, pulled her back a little to look at her face. "What's wrong, my love? Why the long face?" Scarlett glanced towards where Eleanor was, and then looked down as if it were hard for her to speak. "It's nothing, really. It's just, I don't know what to do with your mom." "With my mom? What did she do?" "No, she didn't do anything," Scarlett lied, her voice trembling on the verge of crocodile tears. "It's what she doesn't do. I tried to talk to her, to cheer her up. I offered to take her shopping with me. I asked Gloria to make her favorite tea, but she rejected everything. She won't even look at me. I feel like she doesn't like me, Ethan. I feel like she hates me, and that my presence in this house makes her unhappy. And I can't bear that." It was a performance worthy of an Oscar. She presented Eleanor as the passive aggressor and herself as the heartbroken victim who only wanted to give love. Ethan, completely deceived, turned to his mother, his face a mixture of confusion and frustration. "Mom, but why? Why are you treating Scarlett like this? She just wants to love you, to be your friend. She bends over backwards for you, and you scorn her. I don't understand you." Eleanor was speechless. The trap was perfect. Anything she said would sound like an excuse or an attack. "Son, it's not that, it's just." "Mother-in-law, please, don't force yourself to say something you don't feel," Scarlett interrupted, her voice choked with fake sobs. "It's okay, I understand. I'm not the daughter-in-law you expected for your son. But I love him, and for the love of him, I will bear your contempt in silence. I will learn to live with it." She had stolen her narrative. She had taken Eleanor's real suffering and worn it like a costume. Ethan, his heart broken by his fiancée's pain, hugged her tightly. "No, my love, you don't have to endure anything. You're an angel." "Mom, I don't know what's wrong with you, but this has to change. You're hurting the woman I love." Eleanor felt as if a dagger had been plunged into her chest. Her own son, her adoration, was reprimanding her to defend her tormentor. "I didn't," she tried to say, but her voice broke. "Enough," Ethan said. "Scarlett, my love, I don't want you to cry anymore. I'm going to show you how much I value your effort and your enormous heart." He reached into his jacket pocket and took out the blue velvet box Eleanor already knew. He knelt before Scarlett, an absurdly theatrical scene. "I bought this for you today as a surprise, but now I feel it's more necessary than ever," he said, opening the box to reveal a stunning diamond necklace. "For the most generous, patient, and noble-hearted woman in the world, so that you never doubt that I do see who you are and how much you're worth." Scarlett gasped, the tears miraculously drying up to make way for an expression of ecstasy. "Ethan, it's perfect." He put the necklace on her, and she threw herself into his arms, giving him a long, voracious kiss. It was a kiss of possession, an act of marking territory, and while her lips devoured Ethan's, her eyes opened and locked onto Eleanor's. When the kiss ended, Scarlett stood up, radiant, touching the jewels hanging from her neck. She walked over to Eleanor, who was still frozen in the armchair. She leaned in and, in a whisper that only she could hear, said, "Jewels look better when they're paid for with someone else's tears. Thanks for the gift, mother-in-law." Then, in a loud voice so Ethan could hear, she added, "You'll see, with time, we'll get along very well. It just takes a little effort on your part." She turned and took Ethan's hand, smiling. Eleanor was left alone with the echo of Scarlett's laughter in her ears and the cold of the imaginary diamonds burning her skin. The manipulation had been total. Not only had she been humiliated and isolated, but now, in her son's eyes, she was the one to blame for all the unhappiness in that house. The week leading up to the engagement party became a pressure cooker. The mansion, already hostile territory for Eleanor, was now the command center for a war that was not hers. Scarlett was glued to the phone day and night, her voice a constant drill coordinating floral arrangements, tasting menus, and the guest list a litany of important surnames that meant nothing to Eleanor. One morning, as Eleanor tried to enjoy a moment of peace in the garden, Ethan approached her, his face lit up with excitement. "Mom, I'm so glad I found you. Scarlett and I were talking, and we have everything ready to officially announce our engagement. We're having a party here at the house next Saturday. All the important people in the city will be there, my partners, Scarlett's family, friends. It's going to be an incredible night." Eleanor felt a cold knot in her stomach. A party. Hundreds of rich, elegant strangers. She felt like a mouse being invited to a cat's ball. "That's wonderful, my son. I'm so happy for you," she said, trying to make her voice sound convincing. "And I want you to look like the queen of the night," Ethan continued, oblivious to her turmoil. "You're the groom's mother. You have to be stunning." At that moment, Scarlett appeared, gliding across the lawn like a snake in paradise. "That's just what I wanted to talk about," she exclaimed with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Don't you worry about a thing, my love. I'll personally make sure your mom looks spectacular. I'll take her shopping today, and we'll find her the perfect dress. It will be my gift to her." The offer from anyone else would have been a gesture of affection. Coming from Scarlett, it sounded like a threat. Eleanor tried to refuse. No, that's not necessary. Really, I have a very nice blue dress." "Oh, mother-in-law, please," Scarlett interrupted with a tone of false exasperation. "Don't be modest. A little blue dress? No. You need something designer, something worthy of the event. It's a matter of image, you understand? The family's image. It's decided. We're going after lunch. The ride in Scarlett's luxury car was a silent torture. While the driver navigated the most exclusive streets of the city, Scarlett chattered endlessly about the guest list. Senator Davis and his wife will be there. You have no idea the diamonds that woman wears. I also confirmed Gregory Thompson, the owner of the country's largest real estate development firm. You have to be especially nice to him, mother-in-law. He's a potential investor for Ethan. Oh, and most importantly, no telling your anecdotes about when Ethan sold Jell-O cups on the street, please. These people aren't interested in those rags to riches stories. They find them tacky. You just smile and nod. Understood? Eleanor didn't answer. She just looked out the window, feeling smaller and more alien by the second. The car stopped in front of a boutique whose name was written in elegant gold letters. It had no display window, just a dark glass door that promised a world of exclusivity and exorbitant prices. Upon entering, a tall, thin saleswoman, perfectly made up, greeted them with a rehearsed smile. "Scarlett, darling, what a pleasant surprise," she said, giving her 2 air kisses. "Chloe, how are you? This is Ethan's mother. Her name is Eleanor. We're looking for a dress for the engagement party. Something spectacular." This Chloe person scanned Eleanor with a quick, dismissive glance, pausing for a second on her comfortable shoes and simple handbag. "Of course. For the lady, we have some beautiful things that just arrived from Milan. Follow me." The inside of the store was intimidating. Dresses hung like works of art, a sepulchral silence, and a carpet so thick it felt like walking on clouds. Scarlett began pulling dresses from the racks with a feverish energy. "Let's see, mother-in-law. Try this one on." She handed her a gold sequin dress with a plunging neckline and a slit up the leg that would have made a 20-year-old blush. "Scarlett, I can't wear this," Eleanor whispered, horrified. "Don't be old-fashioned. Ethan wants to see you looking modern, spectacular. Go on, to the dressing room." Eleanor tried on the dress. She felt grotesque, like a caricature. When she came out, Scarlett and Chloe looked at her and stifled a laugh. "No," Scarlett said, pretending to analyze her. "Maybe it's a little too youthful. It really highlights the lack of firmness in your arms." Next. The second dress was the complete opposite, a high-necked, long-sleeved design in a beige, so bland it looked like a shroud. "This one is more discreet, more age-appropriate, don't you think? We don't want people thinking you're trying to cling to youth at my fiancé's expense." This was never about finding a dress. It was a methodical process of dismantling a person's spirit. Scarlett wasn't just choosing fabric and color, she was choosing the perfect shade of humiliation. And as you'll soon see, this public performance was only the opening act for a far more devastating finale. Eleanor tried it on. She felt invisible, erased. The color made her look sick. "I look pale," she said, looking at herself in the mirror with dismay. "It's the store's lighting, don't worry." Let's see. The next one. The third dress was black velvet, elegant, but with a price tag that made Eleanor's stomach turn. Scarlett made sure Eleanor saw the tag. "Oof, this costs more than my first car," she commented loudly. "Are you sure you'll feel comfortable wearing something so valuable, mother-in-law? With your hands shaking sometimes. What if you spill punch on it and ruin it? That would be a tragedy." At that moment, 2 other clients, high society women, entered the store and greeted Scarlett. Eleanor's humiliation was about to become a public spectacle. After trying on 2 more dresses, each more inappropriate than the last, Scarlett sighed with the force of a hurricane, making sure the newcomers could hear her. "Oh, I can't believe it, Chloe," she said with a tone of frustration and pity. "Nothing seems to work. My mother-in-law has a complicated body and a very particular taste. I think I made a mistake bringing her here. Maybe we should try a more modest store, one of those department stores downtown where they sell clothes for more. Simple ladies. The words fell like stones in the boutique silence. The other clients turned and looked at Eleanor with a mixture of pity and mockery. Eleanor felt the heat of shame creep up her neck to her ears. She wanted the earth to swallow her whole. It was a calculated humiliation, perfectly executed in front of an audience. She was exposed as an oddity. The poor woman, the rich daughter-in-law, was unsuccessfully trying to polish. The ride back was an ordeal. Eleanor looked out the window, fighting to hold back the tears that burned her eyes. Scarlett, on the other hand, hummed a pop song, visibly pleased with her work. Upon arriving at the mansion, Ethan greeted them at the entrance. "So, did you find Cinderella's dress?" he asked with a smile. "Oh, my love, you have no idea," Scarlett replied with an exhausted sigh. "We went to every luxury store, but your mom didn't feel comfortable in anything. She's very particular about her clothes. But don't worry, I didn't give up." From a plain plastic bag, she pulled out a simple dress of shiny polyester with an old-fashioned cut. "We passed by a little shop downtown, and I found this for her. It's much more her style, don't you think? Simple, comfortable, so she doesn't feel like she's in a costume." To Ethan, who knew nothing of brands or quality, the gesture seemed a show of consideration and affection. He saw his fiancée, tired after a day of fruitless shopping, proudly presenting a humble dress for his mother. "You're an angel, my love. Always so thoughtful," he said, giving her a kiss. He turned to his mother. "Right, Mom? It's perfect." Eleanor looked at the dress, the final symbol of her humiliation, and then at her son, his eyes filled with a blind happiness. She nodded, unable to speak. "Yes, my son. It's perfect." She went up to her room with the cheap dress in her hands and the weight of a new defeat on her shoulders. The days following the disastrous shopping trip turned into a nightmare of preparations. The mansion was a hive of activity: florists, caterers, decorators. Scarlett was in her element, giving orders with the precision of a general, her voice a constant, metallic echo in the spacious halls. For Eleanor, every corner of the house had become enemy territory. She tried to make herself invisible, seeking refuge in the quietest places like the library or the farthest corner of the garden. But even there, she felt Scarlett's presence, a shadow watching and judging her. One afternoon, when thirst forced her to venture into the kitchen, she ran into Gloria. The maid was finishing her cleaning, her face tired but her eyes always alert. Seeing Eleanor, her expression softened. "Good afternoon, Mrs. Eleanor. Can I get you something?" "Just a glass of water, Gloria. Thank you." Gloria not only served her the water but also took out a small paper-wrapped package containing a sweet bread, a pecan sandy, still warm. "Keep this. I saved it for you from the bread they give us. With all this hustle and bustle, maybe you haven't even eaten properly." The gesture, so small and so significant, moved Eleanor to tears. "Thank you, Gloria. You are very kind." "You have to take care of yourself, ma'am," the maid whispered, glancing nervously towards the door. "Be very careful today. Miss Scarlett is like a whirlwind. She's very upset because the chandeliers she ordered haven't arrived. When she gets like this, she takes it out on whoever gets in her way." Gloria's warning turned out to be prophetic. A couple of hours later, Eleanor was in the second-floor hallway, heading to her room, when Scarlett intercepted her. "You. Just who I was looking for," she said, her voice sharp. "Since you're doing absolutely nothing useful, come help me. In the West Wing storage room, there are some boxes of tablecloths I need to check. Come with me. It wasn't a request, it was an order." The West Wing of the mansion was the oldest and least used. The hallway leading to the storage room was long, narrow, and poorly lit. One of the ceiling bulbs flickered intermittently, creating a gloomy atmosphere. "Walk faster, mother-in-law. I don't have all day," Scarlett urged, walking ahead of her with impatient steps. Eleanor followed, carrying one of the smaller boxes Scarlett had foisted on her. The hallway ended in a small, steep service staircase that descended to a lower level. It was a dark and dangerous corner of the house. Just as they approached the first step, Scarlett stopped short. "Oh, my shoe! I think my heel is stuck," she exclaimed. She bent down, pretending to check her ankle, and in a movement that seemed clumsy and accidental, she stumbled backward, crashing with the full weight of her body against Eleanor. The impact was brutal and surprising. Eleanor, not expecting it, lost her balance. She instantly dropped the box, which tumbled down the stairs with a clatter, and let out a choked cry as her feet got tangled and her body plunged towards the void of the staircase. In a reflex action, she threw out her arms, and her fingers managed to grab the wrought iron banister at the last second. She was left dangling, her heart racing, half of her body over the abyss. The jolt caused a sharp pain in her arm and shoulder, and her skin scraped hard against the rough plaster wall. "Mrs. Eleanor!" Gloria's voice echoed from the other end of the hallway. Alerted by the crash of the box, she had come running. She arrived just in time to see the scene. Eleanor, suspended precariously, her face pale with terror, and Scarlett standing beside her, looking not with alarm, but with an expression of cold disappointment, as if annoyed that the fall hadn't been completed. Upon seeing Gloria, Scarlett's mask changed in a fraction of a second. "Mother-in-law, for God's sake, you nearly killed yourself," she screamed with perfectly acted anguish. "How clumsy of me! I tripped and almost pushed you. Please forgive me." Gloria ran and, along with a Scarlett now feigning overwhelming panic, helped Eleanor regain her balance and stand up. Eleanor was trembling from head to toe, not just from the shock, but from the certainty that it had not been an accident. Her eyes met Gloria's. In the maid's gaze, she saw the same certainty. Gloria had seen the split second of malice on Scarlett's face before the theatrics began. And Scarlett, in turn, watched them both, and in her gaze was an icy warning, a clear message for Gloria. You saw nothing. Gloria, ignoring Scarlett's threatening presence, put an arm around Eleanor's shoulders. "Come, ma'am, I'll take you to your room. You need to sit down and have some sugar water." What a terrible fright. As they walked away, Scarlett followed them with her eyes, an almost imperceptible smile playing on her lips. The plan hadn't gone perfectly, but the message had been sent. Once in the safety of the room, Gloria helped Eleanor sit on the bed. The old woman was still shaking. "Are you all right, ma'am? You didn't get hurt?" My arm hurts," Eleanor whispered, rubbing where she had scraped it against the wall. Gloria examined the arm and saw the red scraped skin, an injury that would become a dark, telltale bruise the next day. "That woman is the devil," Gloria said in a low voice, her face a mixture of anger and fear. The battle lines have now been redrawn. This was no longer just about humiliation, it was about survival. With a witness who is too terrified to speak, Eleanor is now facing a threat that could cost her more than just her peace of mind. It could cost her life. "This can't go on, ma'am. What she did. That wasn't an accident. I saw it. I know, Gloria. I know it too. But what can we do?" The fear in Gloria's eyes was deep. "If I speak up, she'll have me on the street in less than a minute. She'll make up a story for Mr. Ethan that I stole something, that I insulted her, anything. And he'll believe her. I have 2 children in school, ma'am. My mother is sick. This job is all I have. I understand, Gloria. Don't worry. I won't say you saw anything. I'm not going to get you into trouble. The alliance between them solidified in that moment. An alliance forged in shared fear and helplessness. Eleanor had a witness, an ally, but it was an ally silenced by necessity, as much a prisoner as she was in that golden cage. The next morning, the sun streamed through the window of Eleanor's room, but she didn't feel its warmth. She looked at her arm in the mirror. A large, dark, purplish bruise stretched from her elbow to her wrist, a violet map of Scarlett's hatred. It was a physical, painful reminder of her vulnerability. She carefully put on a long-sleeved blouse, hoping the fabric could hide the evidence of the assault. The pain was a dull, constant ache, but the pain in her soul was much deeper. She felt completely alone, trapped in a web of lies from which she saw no escape. She decided to go down to the library, the one place in the house Scarlett rarely entered, considering it boring. She was sitting in a leather armchair, trying to concentrate on the words in a book, when Ethan walked in. He wasn't in his usual rush, nor was his cell phone in his hand. His face showed a calm that Eleanor hadn't seen in weeks. "Hi, Mom. Am I interrupting?" "No, son. Of course not. Come in, sit down." He sat on the coffee table in front of her, a closeness that took her by surprise. "I wanted to apologize," he said in a low voice. "I've been so caught up in work and the party preparations that I've hardly spent any time with you. I feel like a bad son." Ethan's words were a balm to Eleanor's wounded heart. "Don't say that, Ethan. I understand you're busy. I'm very proud of all you've achieved. But none of that matters if my mom isn't happy," he replied, with a sincerity that disarmed her. "Tell me something. Tell me about when we lived in the house in Grant Park. Do you remember the neighbor who had the dog that barked all night?" Eleanor smiled, a genuine memory surfacing. "Mr. Harrison, of course I remember. And you were terrified of that dog." They began to talk, to reminisce about old times. For a moment, the mansion, Scarlett, and the fear disappeared. It was just the two of them again, mother and son, connected by a bond of love and shared history. Eleanor felt a wave of hope. He was there, listening to her, being her old Ethan. Maybe this was the moment. Maybe now, in this bubble of intimacy, he could listen to her, could believe her. As they talked, he reached out to take her hand in a gesture of affection. As he did, the sleeve of Eleanor's blouse slid up, revealing the edge of the horrible bruise. Ethan's smile vanished instantly, replaced by a look of alarm. "Mom, my God, what is this?" he exclaimed, carefully pushing the sleeve back to see the extent of the injury. "What happened to your arm? It looks awful." The moment had arrived. It was now or never. Eleanor's heart began to pound brutally. Her mouth went dry. She looked into her son's worried eyes, gathered all the courage left in her body, and opened her mouth to tell the truth, to speak the name of her tormentor. "Son, I have to tell you something very important. What happened was, Scarlett." The words were about to come out, suspended in the air, heavy with weeks of suffering. But at that precise instant, the library door burst open with a force that made them both jump. It was Scarlett, her face glowing with unbridled euphoria, waving an envelope in her hand. My love, you're not going to believe this. You have to see this," she shouted, running towards them, completely ignoring the tension in the room. Ethan, bewildered, turned to her. "What is it, Scarlett? What's all the commotion?" "The country club, my love. The one we were on the waiting list for 2 years. They just called me. There was a cancellation, and they offered us the date we wanted so badly for the wedding. The first Saturday in June. We're getting married in less than 2 months. It's a sign from destiny." The news landed in the room like a sunbeam. Ethan's concerned expression transformed into one of pure, incredulous joy. He jumped to his feet, completely forgetting about his mother's arm, his question, everything. "Are you serious? The first Saturday in June? I can't believe it. It's the perfect date." He lifted Scarlet into his arms, spinning her around in the air as she laughed hysterically. The library, a haven of peace moments before, was filled with their shouts of happiness. They kissed, a long, passionate kiss, sealing the promise of their future. Eleanor watched them from the armchair, invisible, forgotten. The courage drained from her body, replaced by a bitter, heavy resignation. The opportunity had vanished. The window had closed. How could she, in the midst of so much happiness, drop a bomb of venom and truth? How could she be the monster who snatched away her son's happiest moment? She couldn't. She simply couldn't. After the celebration, Ethan, still grinning from ear to ear, seemed to suddenly remember the pending issue. What great news! We have to start planning everything now. Hey, Mom, with all the excitement, you never told me. What happened to your arm? Are you okay? The question now sounded distant, a discordant note in a symphony of joy. Eleanor pulled down her sleeve, hiding the evidence again. The lie came out with an ease that scared her. It was nothing, my son. Don't worry. Yesterday, with all the hustle of the boxes for the party, I tripped by myself in the hallway and hit the wall. Just my clumsiness. You know how I am. I'm fine, really. As the lie left her lips, a part of Eleanor's soul felt like it had fractured. For decades, her guiding principle had been truth and honesty, the very values she had instilled in her son. Now, she was betraying herself. The physical pain in her arm was nothing compared to the agony of this self-inflicted wound. She was becoming a ghost in her own life, erasing herself, sentence by sentence, for the sake of a happiness she was beginning to realize was a fragile, beautiful illusion. This is the heartbreaking sacrifice of a mother, to shatter her own truth, to protect her son's illusion of happiness. But a lie, even one born from love, is a poison. And as you're about to hear, this single act of self-betrayal will empower Scarlet in ways Eleanor could never have imagined. Ethan, eager to return to his fiancée's arms and their wedding plans, accepted the explanation without hesitation. Well, be more careful, okay? Don't give me these scares. Now, come on. Let's open a bottle of champagne to celebrate. Scarlet, who had observed the entire exchange with the eyes of a hawk, approached Eleanor as Ethan went to the cellar. She gave her a hug that felt like a boa constrictor's. "Oh, mother-in-law, you nearly scared me to death. You have to watch where you're going," she said loudly. And then, in a whisper that only Eleanor could hear, she hissed in her ear, "Very good decision. I congratulate you on your intelligence. It seems you're learning, after all." She pulled away, smiling, and went to join her fiancé, leaving Eleanor alone with her lie, her pain, and the crushing certainty that she had lost her last chance. The lie about the bruise was a turning point. For Scarlet, it was the definitive proof that she had total control. She had humiliated Eleanor in public and private, physically assaulted her, and not only had the old woman said nothing, but she had lied to protect her. This submission emboldened Scarlet in a terrifying way. She felt invincible, untouchable. Eleanor was no longer a threat to be neutralized, but a mouse she could play with before delivering the final blow. She began a campaign of subtle and constant psychological torture. She would hide Eleanor's reading glasses and then accuse her of being forgetful when she couldn't find them. If Eleanor was watching her soap opera, Scarlet would come in and accidentally change the channel. She began to plant the idea in Ethan's mind that his mother was losing her faculties. "My love, I'm so worried about your mom," she would say with a frown. "The other day she asked me the same thing 3 times, and she's leaving her keys all over the place. I think her age is starting to catch up with her." One day, Scarlet was on the terrace talking on the phone with her friend Chloe, the boutique owner. She was complaining bitterly. "I just can't stand her anymore, friend. She's like a ghost dragging herself around the house, always with that victim face. She ruins the energy of my home. I swear, sometimes I wish she would just magically disappear." Chloe, from the other end of the line, let out a frivolous laugh. "Oh, Scarlett, don't be so dramatic. If she bothers you that much, just put her in a nursing home. There are some really cute ones in Florida." The suggestion, made in a joking tone, lit up like a light bulb in Scarlett's mind. She hung up the phone, a slow, malicious smile spreading across her face. It wasn't a joke. It was the final solution. The idea took hold of her, a brilliant and perverse idea. If she could convince Ethan that his mother needed special care, she would not only get rid of her forever, but would do so looking like a selfless and concerned daughter-in-law. That same afternoon, she locked herself in Ethan's office and started researching. But she wasn't looking for luxury residences. She was looking for the exact opposite. She searched the internet for the cheapest nursing homes, the ones with the worst reviews, the ones farthest from the city. She found a perfect one, the Serene Rest, a place in a remote town in rural South Georgia, whose photos showed a gray building with bars on the windows and a neglected garden. The reviews spoke of neglect and sadness. It was ideal. With her design skills, she downloaded the photos, retouched them to look less depressing, and created a fake digital brochure. She renamed it Serenity Villa Spa and Retreat. She added stock images of smiling seniors playing chess and kind-looking nurses. She wrote text, filled with words like holistic wellness, personalized attention, and a paradise for the golden years. Her masterpiece of deception was ready. She chose the perfect moment to spring her trap. She waited for Ethan to come home one night, visibly exhausted from a problem at the office. As he loosened his tie, she approached him with an expression of deep, grave concern. "My love, we need to talk about your mom. I'm getting more anxious every day," she began, her voice a whisper of sorrow. "Now what happened, Scarlett?" he asked tiredly. "Today I found her talking to herself in the garden. And when I asked who she was talking to, she told me it was your dad. Ethan, I think her mind is deteriorating faster than we think. The fall she had in the hallway, her memory lapses. I'm afraid something serious will happen one day. I'm afraid she'll hurt herself and we won't be here to help her." The lie about talking to her dead husband was a low and effective blow. Ethan's concern was piqued. "That's why I've been doing some research," Scarlett continued, showing him her tablet screen with the fake brochure. "I found this place. It's called Serenity Villa. It's not a nursing home, my love. It's a holistic wellness center, a luxury spa for seniors. Look at the facilities. They have geriatric doctors, 24/7, yoga classes, occupational therapy, beautiful gardens for walks. She would be cared for by specialists, surrounded by people her own age. It would be like a permanent vacation for her." Ethan looked at the retouched photos and read the fraudulent text, and the idea began to seem reasonable. "I don't know, Scarlett. I'd feel like I was abandoning her. She's my mom. Abandoning her would be leaving her here alone all day, risking her falling down the stairs for real or leaving the gas on," Scarlett replied, using emotional blackmail. "Loving her is seeking the best for her, even if it hurts us. I'm only thinking of her safety and her happiness. But if you'd rather take the risk, well, it's your decision. I just wanted you to have a clear conscience." The argument was devastating. Tired, stressed, and completely manipulated, Ethan gave in. "Okay, you're right. Your heart is so noble. Sometimes it makes me ashamed. This weekend, we'll go visit the place. No strings attached. If it's as good as you say, then we'll talk to her." Eleanor, who had prepared a linden tea for her son upon seeing him arrive so overwhelmed, was approaching the office at that moment. The door was ajar, and she arrived just in time to hear Ethan's final phrase, "We'll talk to her." She saw the triumphant smile on Scarlett's face. She understood immediately what they were talking about. The plan that Scarlett had shouted to her in the kitchen weeks ago was becoming a reality. Her son, her own son, was planning to get rid of her. The silver tray slipped from her trembling hands. The porcelain cup and teapot shattered against the marble floor with a crash that split the night's silence. The abrupt, violent sound made Ethan and Scarlett spin around. In the doorway stood Eleanor, her eyes fixed on her son. Her face held no sadness or fear, but an expression of absolute horror. The look of someone who has just seen the person they love most in the world transform into a monster. The betrayal was complete, undeniable, and more painful than any physical blow. She was sentenced, and her own son had just signed the order. The crash of porcelain shattering on the marble floor was like a gunshot in the night. Ethan and Scarlett spun around to find Eleanor in the office doorway, her face petrified with horror and betrayal. The silver tray lay at her feet, a silent witness to the conversation that had just condemned her. For a moment, no one moved. Time seemed to freeze in that tableau of silent confrontation. "Mom!" Ethan exclaimed, rushing toward her, his initial anger replaced by genuine concern. "Are you okay? Did you cut yourself?" Scarlett was faster. She stepped between mother and son, instantly adopting her role of the devoted caregiver. "Oh my God, mother-in-law, you scared us to death," she said, taking Eleanor by the arm with a firmness that was more of a capture than a support. "You're as pale as a ghost." "I told you, Ethan. She's not well. She's exhausted, confused. The tray must have slipped. Come on, mother-in-law. I'll take you to your room so you can lie down." Eleanor tried to pull away, tried to speak, but the words wouldn't come. The shock had rendered her speechless. She could only look at her son, a silent plea in her eyes that he, in his blindness, was unable to decipher. "Yes, take her, my love." "Thank you," Ethan said, already bending down to pick up the largest pieces of the broken cup. "Gloria, come clean up this mess, please." As Scarlett forcibly escorted her down the hall, Eleanor saw Gloria approaching with a look of deep anguish. Their eyes met over Scarlett's shoulder. In the maid's eyes, Eleanor saw her own terror reflected. Gloria knew something terrible was happening. Once in the room, Scarlett pushed Eleanor onto the bed without any gentleness. "What a scene," she hissed, locking the door. "You always have to be the star, don't you? Can't you just accept your fate and leave us in peace? I swear, if Ethan starts to doubt because of you, you will regret it." Eleanor finally found her voice, though it was a broken whisper. "Why? Why so much hatred? I've done nothing to you." Scarlett let out a laugh, an ugly, joyless sound. "Done nothing to me? You exist. That's your sin. You're a constant reminder of the misery Ethan comes from, an anchor tying him to a past I want to erase. He is destined for greatness with me, and you don't fit into that picture. Now go to sleep. Tomorrow will be a very long day." She left, locking the door from the outside. Eleanor heard the click of the lock, and panic flooded her. She was locked in. She was a prisoner. For a moment, despair overwhelmed her. She felt old, weak, and completely defeated. She knew about the nursing home plan, and now she was trapped, unable to do anything. But then, as tears of helplessness streamed down her cheeks, something changed. The image of her son's face, so easily manipulated, so blindly in love, ignited a spark of fury within her. No, she would not give up. She would not let that woman destroy her son and take everything he had built. Fear transformed into a cold, icy determination. She couldn't fight her with strength, but perhaps she could with cunning. She had to find proof so irrefutable that not even Ethan's blind love could deny it. The next morning, Scarlett, believing Eleanor to be completely subdued, opened the door. "I brought you breakfast. Eat. I don't want you fainting on the trip." She left the tray and walked away, leaving the door open. It was her first mistake. Eleanor knew that Scarlett, cocky from her victories, would become careless, and that her favorite place to gloat was the pool area. After forcing herself to eat a little, Eleanor left her room. She found an old gardener's hat and a pair of pruning shears in a hallway closet. With her heart pounding, she went down the service stairs to avoid being seen and went out into the garden. She headed for the rose bushes that were conveniently close to the pool terrace and began to prune the dead flowers, crouching down, using the hat and foliage as camouflage. It was a risky bet, but it was the only one she had, and luck for the first time was on her side. A few minutes later, Scarlett appeared on the terrace, dressed in a designer bikini and huge sunglasses. She lay down on a lounge chair and, as Eleanor had predicted, took out her cell phone and called her friend Chloe. She lay down on a lounge chair and, as Eleanor had predicted, took out her cell phone to call her friend Chloe. Confident she was alone, she activated the speakerphone, wanting her hands free to apply sunscreen. "Friend, you won't believe the drama last night," Scarlett began, her voice dripping with amusement. "The old lady caught us planning her exile to Serenity Villa. She dropped a tray, made a scene, but Ethan swallowed it all, as always. He thinks his mommy is getting senile." Chloe let out a laugh on the other end of the line. "Serenity Villa. What an elegant name for that dump. He really bought it completely? I made him a fake brochure, friend, with pictures from another place. It turned out divine. He thinks he's sending her to a luxury spa. When he goes to visit her and sees the filthy pigsty it really is, I'll tell him the administration deceived us with the advertising, that it's a scam. I'll cry a little, I'll get indignant, and I'll tell him it's too late, that the contracts are signed for a year and that getting the old woman out would cost us a fortune in penalties. What do you think of my performance?" Eleanor, hidden among the roses, felt the air leave her lungs. The coldness of the plan was monstrous. With hands that refused to stay still, she took her cell phone from her apron pocket. She opened the voice recorder app and, praying to all the saints, pressed the record button. "You're diabolical, Scarlett," Chloe said between laughs. "And what's next?" "Next? Paradise, friend. Once we're married, the second phase of the plan begins. I'll have Ethan make me the primary beneficiary on all his accounts and properties. I'll use the excuse that it's to protect the family's assets in case something happens to him. He's so noble and so hard-working and so dumb. He believes anything I tell him wrapped in a speech of love and protection. Sometimes I even feel a little sorry for him, but it passes quickly when I see his credit card statement." Eleanor had to bite her lip to keep from sobbing with pain upon hearing how she referred to her son. "And what will you do with the old lady?" Chloe asked. "Once she's locked up tight in that hole, and I have control of the money, the visits will become more spaced out. At first we'll go every weekend so Ethan doesn't suspect. Then, once a month, I'll tell him. We have so much work, my love. An unexpected business trip came up, my darling. Then the visits will be at Christmas and on her birthday. And finally, not even that. We'll leave her there, to rot alone until she dies. It will be my real wedding gift. A life without her shadow, without her smell of mothballs, without her reproachful face. Total freedom." The conversation continued, but Eleanor had already recorded enough. She had the venom, the proof, the entire conspiracy in a small audio file. With infinite care, she stopped the recording and put the phone away. Just then, Scarlett ended the call, got up from the lounge chair, and stretched like a satisfied cat. Her gaze swept the garden. For a second, it stopped on the rose bushes. "Who's there?" she shouted, her voice suddenly sharp. Eleanor froze. Her heart stopped. She felt it was all over. But from behind some nearby bushes, one of the gardeners appeared, an older man named Walter. "Sorry, miss, I was just pulling the weeds." "Excuse me." Scarlett looked at him suspiciously for a long moment, but finally dismissed him with an annoyed gesture. "Well, do it quietly. The noise bothers me." She turned and went back into the house. Eleanor waited for the gardener to walk away, and feeling her legs could barely support her, slipped back into the house through the service door. She went up to her room and locked herself in. She took out the phone and put on her headphones. She pressed play. Scarlett's voice, clear and cruel, filled her ears, detailing every step of her diabolical plan. She had it. She had the bomb that could destroy Scarlett. Now she just had to find the moment and the courage to detonate it. The hunter has just become the hunted. In a single, desperate gamble, Eleanor has captured the truth in a digital bottle. But possessing a weapon is one thing. Having the chance and the courage to use it is another battle entirely. The days following the recording were a torture of waiting and tension. The engagement party was on Saturday, and the mansion was a chaos of preparations. Eleanor clung to her phone as if it were a sacred amulet, waiting for the perfect moment to show the recording to Ethan. But that moment never came. Her son lived in a whirlwind of meetings, calls, and last-minute decisions. When he was home, Scarlett never left his side, clinging to his arm, interrupting any attempt at a private conversation. Eleanor felt like a sniper waiting for a clean shot that never presented itself. Meanwhile, Scarlett, ignorant of the weapon Eleanor possessed, intensified her psychological warfare. She knew time was running out, and she needed to solidify the image of Eleanor as a senile old woman before sending her to the nursing home. She moved her personal belongings, the book she was reading, her knitted shawl, and then helped her find them in absurd places. "Mother-in-law, for God's sake, what are your glasses doing in the sugar bowl?" she would say with false surprise in front of Ethan. "Honestly, you worry me more every day." Eleanor had to endure the humiliation, knowing that protesting would only reinforce Scarlett's narrative. Her future daughter-in-law's cruelty reached a new level when Eleanor received a call from Beatrice, one of her lifelong old friends. Scarlett, who was nearby, snatched the phone from her hand. "Hello?" "Oh, Beatrice. How are you?" "This is Scarlett, Ethan's fiancée." "Yes, your friend is here, but honestly, she's not very lucid right now. Poor thing, she's been saying strange things." No, don't worry. We're taking great care of her. I'll give her your message." "All right, take care." She hung up, severing Eleanor's last tie to her outside world. "We don't want you spreading your craziness to your friends, do we?" she said, handing back the phone with a venomous smile. Confirmation of her worst fears came through Gloria. The loyal maid sought her out in the library, her face pale with fear. "Ma'am, I have to warn you about something," she whispered, glancing at the door. "I heard Miss Scarlett talking to the driver. She gave him very clear instructions. She asked him to have the car ready tomorrow, Friday, at 9 a.m. sharp. She told him it would be for a long trip out of the city and specified that he should come alone, without the other bodyguard. She said they were going to transport a very delicate and fragile package." Eleanor and Gloria looked at each other. No further explanation was needed. The delicate package was her. The one-way trip was scheduled for the next morning. She had less than 24 hours. That night, the tension in the house was almost suffocating. Ethan, exhausted, went to bed early. Eleanor knew that night was her last chance. She waited for the lights to go out and, with the phone in her hand, headed for her son's room. But as she reached the hallway, the guest room door opened, and Scarlett came out. "Lost something, mother-in-law?" she asked, blocking her path. "I was going to say goodnight to my son. Your son is sleeping. He had a very tough day, and you should be going to sleep too. You have a very important trip tomorrow." The final confrontation had arrived. Scarlett followed her to her room. Eleanor entered and, turning around, saw that Scarlett was holding a suitcase. It was an old, cheap plastic suitcase with a broken zipper. She threw it onto Eleanor's bed with a gesture of contempt. "Time to pack," she announced, her voice devoid of all emotion. Eleanor tried to buy time, feigning a confusion she didn't feel. Pack? For what trip? Ethan didn't tell me anything. Scarlett smiled, a smile of superiority and sadism. Of course he didn't tell you anything. He's too good. He doesn't have the stomach for these things. But I do. Tomorrow morning, one day before my engagement party, you are leaving for your new and wonderful home. Serenity Villa, she paused, savoring the moment. Ethan and I visited it last weekend. He thought it was a bit rustic. He had his doubts, but I explained to him that beauty lies in simplicity. I reminded him that you come from a humble background and that all this luxury here overwhelms you. I convinced him that in that quiet, modest place, you would feel right at home. You're going to love it. She opened the cheap suitcase on the bed. Here you go. I suggest you start packing your old rags. Don't bother taking the expensive clothes my fiancé bought you. You won't need them. In fact, I'm told that in your new home, they'll give you a very practical and comfortable uniform. All the guests dress the same. To promote equality, you see? The cruelty was in every detail, designed to strip her of her identity, of her dignity. At that moment, the door opened and Ethan walked in, yawning. What's all this noise? Mom, why do you have a suitcase? Scarlett turned instantly, her face transforming into a mask of affection. My love, I was just giving your mom this new, lighter suitcase for her trip to the spa. Hers is so heavy. Right, mother-in-law? You're already excited for your vacation. Ethan, half asleep, saw the suitcase and felt a pang of guilt but quickly suppressed it, convinced by Scarlett's lies that it was for his mother's own good. He approached Eleanor and hugged her. You're going to love it, Mom. Really. You'll rest. You'll make friends. We'll call you every day. It's for your own good. The hug felt like an executioner's. Her son was handing her over with a kiss and a smile. Well, everyone to bed, Ethan said, and left. Once the door closed, Scarlett's smile vanished. The car will be here for you at 9 a.m. sharp, she said, her voice turning back into an iceberg. I personally scheduled a very important meeting for Ethan at 8 a.m. on the other side of town, so he won't be here for sentimental goodbyes and crying. Be a good girl, Eleanor. Don't make a scene. Cooperate. Or I swear, on all that is holy, that the trip and the welcome to your new home will be much, much more unpleasant than you can imagine. She left, leaving Eleanor alone in her room with the cheap suitcase on the bed, a coffin for the life she had known. The phone with the recording felt heavy in her pocket. She had a bomb, but she was locked in a room, about to be sent into exile, and time was running out with every second. The night was an endless vigil. Eleanor didn't sleep a single minute. She sat in the armchair by the window, watching the moon traverse the sky, feeling the tick-tock of the living room clock like hammer blows in her head. She held the cell phone in her hand, the cold metal a contrast to the fire of rage and fear burning inside her. She reviewed her options over and over. Scream? Break down the door? They would make her look insane, confirming all of Scarlett's lies. Wake up, Ethan? Scarlett would be by his side in a second, denying everything, saying the recording was a setup, a fake made by a jealous, senile old woman. And Ethan, in his state of infatuation, would probably believe her. No, a panic attack would do her no good. She needed a plan. She looked at the wooden box with her treasures lying on the dresser. She got up and opened it. She contemplated her husband's photo, her son's drawing, the knitted booty. They weren't just memories. They were testaments to her strength. She had raised a son alone in a difficult world. She had faced poverty, loneliness, and loss. She had worked to the point of exhaustion. She had sacrificed her own dreams for her sons. She was not a weak victim. She was a survivor. She was a mother. And a mother, when her cub is in danger, becomes a lioness. This is the moment a victim remembers she is a warrior. Scarlett's greatest mistake was never her cruelty. It was underestimating a lifetime of resilience. The plan was to quietly remove an old woman, but in her arrogance, she has just cornered a lioness, and a lioness will not be caged without a fight. An icy calm washed over her, displacing the fear. Desperation transformed into strategy. She knew what she had to do. At 8 o'clock in the morning, just as Gloria had warned, she heard a soft knock on the door. "Ma'am, it's 8 o'clock. The driver informed me that the car is already waiting downstairs." Gloria's voice was heavy with sorrow and helplessness. Eleanor opened the door. She was fully dressed, not in travel clothes, but in her Sunday best blue dress, the one she liked most, a simple but dignified dress. Her hair was perfectly combed. The cheap suitcase was on the floor, next to the door, empty and open. "Thank you, Gloria. Tell the driver to please wait a few minutes." "I won't be long," Eleanor said. Her voice was so serene and firm that it surprised the maid. Gloria nodded, confused but relieved by the lady's apparent calm. Eleanor waited for Gloria's footsteps to fade. She knew Scarlett would be watching. She had to make her move. She left her room, not towards the main staircase, but towards Ethan's office. The phone with the recording, ready to be played, was in her hand. It was her only chance. If she could get into the office, she could connect the phone to the sound system and make the whole house listen. But Scarlett was smarter. As if she had read her mind, she appeared at the end of the hall, blocking her path. "Where do you think you're going in such a hurry?" she asked, crossing her arms. Her face was a mask of impatience. "The exit is the other way, and your time is up." "I need to talk to my son," Eleanor said, trying to pass. "Your son is in a very important meeting, saving his company's hide thanks to a little crisis I managed to uncover last night. He won't be back until noon, so there's no one to save you. Let's go." The confrontation was inevitable. At 9 o'clock, Scarlett went up to Eleanor's room, her patience completely exhausted. "The waiting is over. The driver is calling me." "What the hell are you waiting for?" she yelled as she entered. She saw Eleanor sitting on the bed, calm, and saw the empty suitcase. A dark fury clouded her features. "You haven't packed. Are you mocking me? Are you an idiot or what?" Eleanor stood up slowly. Her 5'3" frame seemed to grow, her fragility replaced by a steely dignity. She looked Scarlett directly in the eye, without blinking. "I'm not going anywhere, Scarlett." The silence that followed that sentence was dense, charged with electricity. Scarlett looked at her incredulously, as if unable to process what she had just heard. "What? What did you say?" she stammered, for the first time losing her composure. "I said I'm not leaving," Eleanor repeated. Her voice was low, but it resonated with an unshakable authority. "This is the house my son built with the sweat of his brow. This is the house where this weekend the party to announce his happiness will be celebrated. And I, his mother, the one who brought him into the world and raised him to be the man he is, am going to be here to see it. I am not leaving." Scarlett burst into laughter, a sharp, unpleasant sound. "Well, look at that. The little mouse has shown its claws. You are in no position to decide anything. You are a senile old woman, a burden that we are going to commit for your own good and with the blessing of your beloved son. So right now, you move your old bones, or I swear I will drag you out of here." She lunged at Eleanor to grab her arm, but the old woman didn't move. She stood firm as an oak. "You're not going to touch me," Eleanor said, and there was such conviction in her voice that Scarlett stopped dead. "And you're not going to get me out of here, because your game is over. I'm not afraid of you anymore." It was that calm, that total absence of fear, that unhinged Scarlett. She was used to Eleanor's tears, her submission, her terror. This new Eleanor, strong, defiant, unbreakable, was an enemy she didn't know how to fight. The power had shifted. The victim refused to be a victim any longer. Scarlett looked at her, her face contorted by impotent rage. She tried one last tactic. "Please, Eleanor, don't make things harder. Be reasonable. It's for the best for everyone." Eleanor didn't respond. "Ah, I get it," Scarlett mocked. "You think if you stay, you'll manage to ruin my party, right? You think you can beat me? How pathetic." But her insults bounced off the wall of Eleanor's serenity. Scarlett realized that her plan, so simple and so perfect, had just crashed against an iron will. The lioness had awakened and was defending her territory. And a cornered lioness is the most dangerous animal in the world. The atmosphere in the room was suffocating. Eleanor's defiant calm was like gasoline on the fire of Scarlett's fury. The fact that her threats and insults had no effect was driving her mad. She had lost control of the situation, and that was something she could not tolerate. "I've run out of patience," she screamed, her voice breaking with rage. "I told you I'd drag you out, and that's exactly what I'm going to do." She lunged forward and grabbed Eleanor's arm with the force of a steel claw. But the woman she held was no longer the frail, frightened old lady of the previous days. With a strength born of desperation and adrenaline, Eleanor broke free with a sharp movement. "I told you not to lay a hand on me," she exclaimed, her voice rising for the first time, filled with an indignation that had been suppressed for weeks. The struggle began. It was an unequal fight. Scarlett was younger, taller, stronger. She pushed Eleanor against the dresser. The blow was hard, and the small wooden box with Eleanor's treasures fell to the floor. The contents spilled across the carpet. Ethan's photo, the drawing of the sun, her husband's watch. Seeing her most sacred objects trampled and scattered on the floor was the ultimate desecration. A cry of anguish and rage escaped from Eleanor's throat. "My things, you animal." That distraction was all Scarlett needed. Taking advantage of Eleanor bending down to try to pick up her memories, she grabbed her from behind and began to drag her out of the room. Eleanor resisted, clinging to the doorframe, her nails scratching the wood. "Let go of me! You're crazy! You're the crazy one! A crazy old woman who doesn't understand her place!" Scarlett snarled, pulling her with all her might. She managed to get her into the hallway. Gloria, who was cleaning downstairs, heard the screams and ran up the stairs. She froze at the sight of the scene, Scarlett forcibly dragging Mrs. Eleanor, who was struggling to break free. Their eyes met. Eleanor's was a plea for help. Scarlett's, a death threat. Gloria, terrified, took a step back, her hands flying to her mouth. In that moment, her fear for her job warred with her conscience. She looked at Eleanor's desperate face, then at Scarlett's monstrous cruelty. She knew she couldn't intervene physically without being fired instantly. But as Scarlett began to drag Eleanor down the grand staircase, Gloria's terror gave way to a desperate resolve. She couldn't fight Scarlett, but she could sound an alarm. Fumbling for her own phone, her fingers trembling, she found Mr. Ethan's number. She didn't dare to call, knowing Scarlett might hear. Instead, she sent a single, frantic text message. "Come home now. Your mother is in danger. Urgent." She hit send, praying it would be enough. It was the only weapon she had. Scarlett didn't stop. She dragged Eleanor down the entire hallway and then down the grand marble staircase. Eleanor stumbled, her knees hitting the hard steps. They finally reached the living room. With one last violent push, Scarlett threw Eleanor onto one of the expensive silk sofas. Eleanor landed awkwardly, hitting her head against a cushion and losing her breath. Scarlett stood before her, panting, her hair disheveled and her face red with effort and anger. The mask of the society lady hadn't just fallen, it had shattered into dust. What remained was the real Scarlett, a being consumed by hatred. And then she began to speak. It was a venomous monologue, a torrent of bile she had been accumulating for months. "Who the hell do you think you are?" Her voice was a shriek that bounced off the high walls of the room. "An old freeloader. A starving beggar living off the charity and pity of my fiancé. A woman who is nothing and nobody. And you dare to defy me? Me? In my own house?" She began to pace back and forth in front of the sofa like a caged tigress. "I gave you everything. I took you out of the filthy hovel you lived in and brought you to a palace. You eat the food I choose. You sleep under the roof I decorated. You breathe the air I pay for. I gave you the chance to have a dignified old age, surrounded by luxuries you never would have imagined in your wildest dreams. And this is how you repay me? With your martyr face, with your sighs trying to turn my son against me, trying to ruin my life, my wedding, my happiness?" She stopped and pointed an accusatory finger at her. "You are a parasite. Do you understand? A parasite, a leech that has attached itself to your son and refuses to let go. You can't stand to see that he loves me, that I am his present and his future, while you are just an annoying memory of a past we all want to forget. But it's over. From today on, I am the owner of this house, his money and his life, and you are nothing. You are dust. You are a leftover." In her fit of fury, her crazed eyes searched for something to destroy. They landed on the fireplace mantel, where an ornate silver frame held one of Ethan's favorite photographs, his elementary school graduation picture. It was an image of innocence he cherished. With a guttural cry, Scarlett snatched it. "You want to talk about the past? About a mother's love?" She spat. "This is what I think of your miserable past." And with all her strength, she hurled the picture frame against the marble hearth. The impact was brutal. The glass shattered, scattering across the floor in 1,000 glittering fragments. The silver frame dented and twisted. No, Eleanor's scream was a visceral lament, a sound torn from the depths of her soul. It wasn't just a photo. It was the symbol of her sacrifice, the face of her son's innocence, the only treasure she had left from a life of struggle. Without thinking of the danger, she slid off the sofa and began to crawl across the carpet toward the pieces of glass, with the desperate intention of rescuing the broken image of her son. Tears blinded her, and her hands trembled as she tried to gather the pieces of the torn photograph. Scarlett stood over her, her chest heaving, a goddess of destruction contemplating her work. On her face there was no regret, only the savage pleasure of victory. The mask of perfection had not just been broken, it had been pulverized, and the monster that lived beneath reveled in the devastation it had caused. She believed she had finally broken Eleanor completely. This isn't just an act of rage, it's a strategic strike against the very core of Eleanor's identity, her motherhood. Some things, once shattered, can never be pieced back together. Is this the moment the last of Eleanor's fighting spirit is finally extinguished? The room fell silent, broken only by the heartbreaking sobs of a mother kneeling over the remains of her heart. The mansion's living room had transformed into a battlefield. The air was thick with hatred and tension. Eleanor, kneeling among the shattered glass of her most precious memory, felt each piece of glass like a stab in her own heart. Sobs shook her body, but they were not sobs of defeat. They were of a deep, primal rage. Scarlett watched her from above, her chest heaving, savoring her apparent victory. She thought she had destroyed her, but she underestimated the strength of a mother wounded in her most sacred place. "What's wrong, mother-in-law? Your little toy broke?" Scarlett mocked, her voice a venomous hiss. "You should thank me. I'm doing you a favor by erasing those memories of poverty. In your new life at Serenity Villa, you won't have room for cheap sentimentality." Slowly, with a dignity that seemed to be born from the ruins of her pain, Eleanor stood up. She brushed the small fragments of glass from her dress, ignoring the fine cuts they had made on her hands. She lifted her face, her eyes, red from crying, no longer showed fear, but a cold, hard flame. "You can break a picture frame, Scarlet. You can spill my coffee. You can hide my things. You can humiliate me," she said. Her voice was low, but it cut through the air like a knife. "But there's something you can never break, and that's the love my son feels for me. That's not made of glass. It's made of something you'll never understand. And that love, sooner or later, will open his eyes." Eleanor's calm, her unexpected and defiant declaration of faith, was the spark that caused the final explosion in Scarlet. That this woman, whom she believed crushed and defeated, dared to speak to her of love, that she dared to imply that she, Scarlet, could lose, was an intolerable insult. "Shut your mouth, you stupid old woman," she roared, her face contorting into a mask of fury. "Ethan's love is mine. I won it. And you are nothing but a nuisance, an old piece of furniture in the way of my new house." In her rage, Scarlet began to act irrationally. She saw a small wooden stool, a footstool Eleanor sometimes used to rest her feet. She grabbed it and threw it against a wall, where it hit with a dull thud. "This is how I get rid of old furniture," she screamed, out of her mind. Then her crazed gaze fell on Eleanor. A perverse and cruel idea crossed her mind. Her anger transformed into a sinister calm, much more terrifying than her screams. "You know what? You're right. I'm getting too upset. I'm tired of fighting," she said, her voice suddenly syrupy and false. "Let's talk like civilized people. Please, sit down." She pointed to another identical stool that was near the fireplace. It was a small, unstable piece, not designed for prolonged use. It was an order, not an invitation. Eleanor looked at her suspiciously, but the exhaustion from the physical and emotional struggle was overcoming her. Maybe if she sat down, if she feigned calm, the storm would pass. With her body aching, she walked slowly and sat on the small stool. Scarlet stood in front of her, looking down at her, a predator savoring her power over her prey. "See? This is how I like it. That you understand your place. How does it feel when I tell you to sit? To speak when I give you permission? Now you understand, right? You're not the Queen Mother. You're a visitor, just another object in this house that I will decorate to my liking. And honestly, mother-in-law, you don't match my furniture. You're a nuisance that I will very soon throw in the trash." During the previous struggle, Eleanor's cell phone, the one containing the recording, had partially slipped out of her apron pocket, remaining dangerously in sight. Neither of them had noticed. Scarlet took a step back as if admiring the scene. Eleanor seated, submissive, she standing, victorious. But it wasn't enough. She needed a final act, a gesture of domination so absolute and cruel that it would mark her victory forever. "Do you know what bothers me most about you?" she continued, her voice dropping to a whisper laced with venom. "Your air of moral superiority. That face of a saintly, self-sacrificing little mother makes me nauseous. You think because you gave birth to him, you have some right over him? But children are not their mother's property. They are trophies won by the smartest women. And I, dear Eleanor, am much smarter than you." And then, in an act of pure, gratuitous evil, an act that would forever define the kind of monster she was, Scarlet lifted her foot, shod in a stiletto heel, and with a quick, precise movement, kicked one of the legs of the fragile stool where Eleanor was sitting with all her might. It all happened in a fraction of a second. The sound of cracking wood, Eleanor's choked cry of surprise, the feeling of emptiness as she lost her support. The stool tipped over, and she fell sideways with her full weight onto the hard, cold marble floor. The blow was brutal. A sharp, blinding pain shot through her hip and side, the impact stealing her breath and making her vision swim with dark spots. She lay on the floor, momentarily stunned and gasping for air. The world shrunk to a swirl of pain, but through it, She was acutely aware of Scarlett standing over her. She saw, as if through a tunnel, Scarlett's expensive shoes inches from her face. She heard, in the distance, the satisfied and cruel laughter of her tormentor. Every fiber of her being screamed, but no sound came from her mouth. She was broken, physically and spiritually. She had fought, she had resisted, but in the end, she had lost. Evil had won. She felt the tears begin to roll down her temples, mixing with the dust on the floor. She gathered the last ounce of air left in her lungs, the last drop of will, and exhaled it in a whisper. A plea directed not to Scarlett, but to the universe, to God, to nothingness. A final surrender. Please, stop. It is often in the moment of absolute surrender, when all hope seems lost, that destiny chooses to intervene. But the question is, what will a son, blinded by love, truly see? The entire story hinges on this next moment. The silence that followed Eleanor's plea was dense, heavy. Scarlett enjoyed it. She savored it like an expensive wine. She contemplated the woman lying on the floor, a mass of pain and defeat, and felt an intoxicating wave of power. She had won. She had crushed her. She had silenced her forever. She was so absorbed in her triumph that she didn't hear the almost imperceptible sound of a key turning in the front door lock. She didn't hear the soft click of the bolt opening. She didn't hear the silent footsteps on the foyer rug. Ethan had had a premonition. The morning meeting had been cancelled at the last minute, and instead of feeling relieved, he felt a strange pang of unease, a feeling that something was not right at home. He decided to return, perhaps to take his mother and Scarlett to lunch, to smooth things over before the big party. He stopped by a flower shop and bought a huge bouquet of Scarlett's favorite orchids, a gesture of peace and love. He entered the house with a smile on his face, ready to announce the good news. But the smile froze on his lips as he reached the threshold of the living room. The scene that greeted him was one of devastation. The overturned stool, the shattered glass scattered in front of the fireplace, and in the center of it all, his fiancée Scarlett, standing with an expression of wild triumph on her face and at her feet, lying on the floor, like a wounded animal. His mother. He was paralyzed, his brain unable to process the incongruity of the image. It was then that he heard the whisper, a thread of a voice so weak it was almost carried away by the wind, but to him it sounded like thunder. "Please, stop." The bouquet of orchids slipped from his limp hand. The purple and white flowers fell to the floor with a soft, dull thud, scattering across the carpet. The sound, though slight, was enough for Scarlett to finally realize they were not alone. She turned slowly. The expression on her face went from triumph to disbelief, and from there to absolute panic in a fraction of a second. She turned a waxy shade of pale. "My love," she exclaimed, her voice high and shrill. "Ethan, thank God you're here. You have no idea what just happened." She began to speak at top speed, stumbling over her words, weaving an increasingly desperate and convoluted web of lies. Your mom went crazy. Completely crazy. She started screaming that I was the one trying to rob you. She grabbed your photograph, your treasure, and smashed it against the fireplace with her own hands. I tried to calm her down, to reason with her, but she became like a wild animal. She attacked me, she scratched me, and in the struggle, she tripped over the stool by herself and fell. I swear, my love, she's losing her mind. I've been telling you, she needs professional help urgently. But Ethan wasn't listening. He wasn't even looking at her. He walked past her as if she were a statue, his eyes fixed on the still figure of his mother. His movements were slow, deliberate, charged with a fury so cold and deep, it was far more terrifying than any shout. He knelt beside Eleanor. "Mom," his voice was barely a murmur. "Mom, are you okay? Can you hear me?" With infinite gentleness, he slid an arm under her shoulders to help her sit up. Eleanor groaned in pain, clinging to him. As he moved her, something fell from her apron pocket and landed on the floor beside them. It was her cell phone. The screen was slightly cracked from the fall, but it was on, displaying the voice recorder interface. Ethan saw it. His gaze went from the phone to Scarlett's terrified face, and then back to the phone. The pieces of the puzzle began to fit together in his mind with painful, terrible clarity. He picked it up. His thumb moved with a sinister calm over the screen. He pressed play, and then the room filled with Scarlett's voice. The clear, mocking, and cruel voice that Eleanor had recorded by the pool. The nursing home, friend, is a dump. I called it Serenity Villa. What a laugh. Ethan swallowed the story that it's a spa. Scarlett tried to say something. She stammered a no. That's. But the voice from the recording silenced her. He's so noble and so hard-working. And so dumb. He believes all my lies. Sometimes I even feel sorry for him, but it passes quickly when I see his credit card statement. Every word was a hammer blow to Ethan's heart. The betrayal was absolute, the manipulation grotesque. When the old lady is locked up tight, and I have control, we'll visit her less and less until she dies alone in that hole. It'll be my wedding gift. Ethan stopped the recording. The silence that remained was heavier than a tombstone. The truth, once spoken, cannot be unheard. In the deafening silence that follows, an entire world built on lies has just been leveled to the ground. Now, out of the rubble of this devastating betrayal, a mother and son must face the painful aftermath. He helped his mother to her feet, holding her firmly. Eleanor leaned on him, her refuge, her salvation. Then Ethan turned to face Scarlett. His face was an impassive mask, but his eyes burned with an icy fire. There was no pain, no sadness, only infinite contempt. Scarlett broke down. She fell to her knees, crawling towards him, crocodile tears streaming down her face. No, my love, please, forgive me. I love you. I did it for us, for our future. That recording is edited. It's taken out of context. I swear. Ethan looked at her as if he were looking at an insect. When he finally spoke, his voice was so calm, so devoid of emotion, that every word was a death sentence. You don't have to explain anything, Scarlett. I've heard everything, and I've seen everything. He took out his own cell phone with precise, economical movements. He opened his banking app. This credit card, he said, showing her the screen. Cancelled. The authorized user on my checking account. Cancelled. The access to the house. Cancelled. Scarlett stared at him, her mouth open in horror, as he dismantled her life of luxury in a matter of seconds. Get your things. You have 10 minutes to disappear from my house and my life. Call one of your friends or a taxi. The driver won't take you to the corner. The guards at the gate will make sure you don't try to take anything that isn't yours. And if you dare to come near me or my mother again, he continued, his voice dropping even lower, becoming lethally quiet, I will not just ruin your career. I will release this recording to the press. The entire city, all those senators and CEOs you admire so much, will know exactly what kind of monster you are. You will be a social pariah for the rest of your life. Am I clear enough? The fury wasn't an explosion of noise. It was the silent, devastating force of a black hole, consuming her entire world without a sound. She, trembling, knowing she had lost everything, could only nod, choked by her own lies. Scarlett's world collapsed in slow motion. The 10 minutes Ethan gave her were the most humiliating countdown of her life. She got up from the floor, her legs weak, and went up the stairs under the implacable gaze of Ethan, who didn't move from his spot, protectively holding his mother. Every step was torture. She knew that Gloria and the rest of the household staff were hidden, listening, witnessing her downfall. In what had been her room, now foreign territory, she acted with the desperation of a thief. She opened drawers, yanking out silk clothes and designer dresses, throwing them carelessly into a brand-name suitcase. Her hands moved towards the jewelry box, a treasure chest that Ethan had given her. She opened it, her fingers searching for the diamond necklace, the emerald earrings, the gold watches, but a voice from the door stopped her cold. "None of that belongs to you, Scarlett." Ethan stood in the doorway, his face a mask of ice. "Those jewels were gifts. They're mine," she shrieked, clutching the jewelry box. "They were gifts for a woman I loved. That woman never existed. She was a lie. The gifts, therefore, are null and void. Leave it." His tone brooked no argument. With a sob of rage, Scarlett dropped the jewelry box as if it were burning. She grabbed her purse, her most expensive shoes, and stuffed everything she could into the suitcase. It was a pathetic scene. The deposed queen, fleeing her palace with the few trinkets she could carry. She took out her cell phone to call her friend Chloe. "Chloe, you have to come get me at Ethan's house right now," she whispered, trying to maintain what little dignity she had left. Chloe's voice on the other end sounded cold, distant. "Did something happen, Scarlett? I'm in the middle of a facial. Ethan threw me out. He threw me out of the house. You have to come get me." There was a pause. "Oh, what a shame, friend. But you know what? My car is in the shop right now, and I have a terrible headache. I can't drive. Call an Uber." "Good luck with that." Click. Chloe had hung up on her. The rats were the first to abandon the sinking ship. Humiliated, defeated, she called a taxi service. With the suitcase in one hand and her pride in pieces, she descended the grand staircase for the last time. As she passed through the living room, she saw Gloria, who was now in plain sight, carefully cleaning up the remains of the broken picture frame, a task that seemed symbolic. Gloria didn't look at her with triumph, but with an icy indifference that was much worse. 2 security guards Ethan had called were waiting for her at the door. They escorted her to the taxi waiting outside, making sure she didn't stray. When the door of the modest sedan closed, separating her forever from the life of luxury she had so craved, Scarlett finally broke down and began to cry, not from remorse, but from pure, selfish rage for all she had lost. Inside the house, once the sound of the car faded, a deep, heavy silence settled in the living room. It was a different kind of silence than before. It wasn't tense. It was the silence of emptiness, the kind that remains after a storm has destroyed everything. Ethan was still standing, looking at the door through which Scarlett had disappeared. His face, previously hard and furious, began to crumble. The adrenaline of the confrontation dissipated, leaving behind the raw pain of betrayal and overwhelming guilt. He looked at his mother, who was watching him with infinite sadness. He looked at her bruised hands, the bruise on her arm that he had ignored, the weariness in her eyes that he had refused to see. He looked at the remains of his photograph on the floor, and the dam of his self-control finally broke. He didn't kneel. He collapsed. His knees gave way, and he fell to the floor in front of his mother and began to sob. They weren't silent tears. They were wrenching, guttural sobs that came from the depths of a broken soul. He rested his head on his mother's knees, like a small child seeking comfort after a nightmare. "Forgive me," he managed to say between gasps. "Forgive me, Mom. Please, forgive me. I was blind, I was deaf, I was an idiot. You were screaming for help, and I didn't listen to you. I left you alone with that monster. I defended her. I put her before you. I failed you, Mom. I failed you in every way. I'm the worst son in the world." Eleanor, despite her own physical and emotional pain, felt her heart expand with an immense love. Her son's pain was 1,000 times worse than her own. With trembling hands, she stroked his hair, the nape of his neck, as she used to when he was a child and had a fever. "Shh, it's over, my boy," she whispered, tears now streaming down her own cheeks. "No, my son, don't say that. You weren't an idiot. You were in love, and love sometimes makes us all blind and deaf. It's not your fault. The fault lies with evil, not with love. It's over now. The nightmare is over. We're together now, and that, my Ethan, is the only thing that matters." Her forgiveness was instant, absolute, and unconditional. There were no reproaches, no resentment, only the pure love of a mother getting her son back. They stayed like that for a long time, embracing amidst the rubble of their lives, crying together, healing together. Gloria approached them with silent steps. In her hands, she carried not only a glass of water, but also a small first aid kit and a cup of hot linden tea. She knelt beside them. "Ma'am, let me clean those hands," she said softly as she began to gently clean Eleanor's scrapes. Then she offered the tea to Ethan. "For the shock, sir." Ethan looked up, his eyes red and swollen. "Thank you, Gloria. And forgive me, too, for not having seen anything." "There is nothing to forgive, Mr. Ethan," Gloria replied. And for the first time since the story began, a genuine, wide smile lit up her face. The nightmare is over for everyone. When Gloria withdrew, Ethan took his mother's hands, the ones the maid had just bandaged. He kissed them one by one. "I swear on my father's memory, Mom. I swear it here and now. Never again will I doubt you. Never again will I let anyone, absolutely anyone, hurt you again. Never again will I put any person or thing above you. From this day on, you are my queen, my priority, my everything. And I'm going to spend the rest of my life trying to make up for every tear you shed in this house. I swear it." The hug they shared then was a rebirth, the embrace of truth that sealed the end of the lie and the beginning of a new life. Standing before the mirror in the room that was no longer cold, Eleanor no longer saw a strange figure draped in borrowed armor. She saw only herself, a woman whose wrinkles were a map of resilience. The silence of the mansion no longer echoed threats, but rang with the melody of peace she had reclaimed. The shackles of humiliation were not merely broken, they had dissolved like morning dew. She realized her silence had never been the price of her son's happiness. It was the very cage that had imprisoned them both. And the truth, however painful, was the only key to liberation. Eleanor's story